All right. Hello, everyone. Reverend Dr. Bryant T. Marks here, back again with our Bias series. I know it's been a couple of weeks since our last time together. My apologies. Lots going on in our country. It's been pretty busy. But we'll get back into our myth busting series. So, we're looking at myths that are out there, and we want to sort of challenge them. Looking at the impact of misperceptions and bias on the relationship between police and African Americans. That's the overall theme. The myth we're going to address today, it's kind of a myth, is that police officers are and think alike. What's been happening is in our conversations around George Floyd, around Rayshard Brooks, and so forth, people are asking, well, who are these cops? You know, how are they bad apples to begin with? Did they become bad apples? So we're going to take a deeper dive at police work, how they're selected, and some of their attitudes. Okay, so don't be fooled by the title. All right, I'm going to give you some balance, but it's going to be evidence driven. So, Chief Equity Officer and founder of the National Training Institute of Race and Equity, a tenured professor of psychology at Morehouse College. I've done work across the country. I've trained over 30,000 police officers, community members, prosecutors, public defenders, corrections, probation. So we've been in this criminal justice space pretty deeply for a long time. But I want to give you some perspective through this series. Feel free to reach out if you need to. I'm also going to drop some of the links in the bottom. And I've been told by my team, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, that sort of thing. But I just want to get some information to you to advance the conversation going on across the country when it comes to bias, whether it's implicit or explicit, in a relationship between African Americans and police, but maybe the perceptions of African Americans generally speaking. All right, so let's get into a little bit. Now, some of y'all may think, well, the police, the national group called the police, they all look alike and think alike, they're selected alike. I'm going to take a deeper dive and give you some information that's going to be helpful. Okay, here we go. Some key questions we want to address. Number one, how are police selected? Number two, why do they become police officers? Whoever decides to become police, why do they? And finally, do they all think alike? So I'm going to show you data from some trainings we've done across the country. We have a lot of data, from police, about from the community perceptions of the police, that sort of thing. All right, here we go. So some quick facts. So there's a bit over 800,000 sworn police officers throughout the United States, which is the highest figure ever. So it's really about 700,000 full-time. When you add in folks who have arresting power, whether it's part-times or deputies, whatever the case may be, you're talking a little over 800,000. 15% are female, 77% white, 13% black. Interestingly, that maps on with the national black population, right at 13%, 13.3 or so. Average salary, $69,000. Depending on where you are, could be more than that, less than that. Also, depending on where you are, you may be able to afford to live where you police. Other places, not so much. Okay, I'll talk more about that shortly. Approximately 18,000 law enforcement agencies throughout the United States. A lot of folks don't know that. Quite a bit of variability out there. But here's the kicker, folks. Approximately 52% of them have less than 25 sworn officers. Most police departments in this country are small, okay? We tend to have this notion of, big urban police departments, and there's a lot of people there. Roughly 55, 60% of officers are in urban settings, but in terms of the number of departments, a lot of them are small. So I'm in Atlanta. So you have Atlanta, we have Augusta, we have Houston, and between all these big cities is a whole bunch of land. And in that land is a whole bunch of small towns, maybe 1,000 people, something like that. And you might have one sheriff and three deputies, and that's the whole police department, right? You think in Alligator, Mississippi, they got a whole big police department? Nope, right? And they close at night, some of these small ones, they go home, right? Everybody knows each other. What's the point? Okay, so wide variability, 18,000 departments. So police officers who are watching this right now, when you think about vouching for all the police, you're talking 800,000 people across 18,000 departments. And most of those departments are small. Keep that in mind, okay? Let's go deeper. Minimum age for police officers, between 18 and 21. That varies by state. Right now, there are 4 states where you can be 18 years old sworn in as an officer. Y'all missed that. Check it out. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain most responsible for critical thinking and decision-making, the prefrontal cortex, does not fully form until our mid-20s. So you have 18-year-olds with impulse control issues, a gun and a badge, 12 to 14 weeks of training on the street, right? Now, we'll let 18-year-olds become police officers and carry a gun and a badge and empower them to take somebody's life, but they're not old enough to drink. So you can't drink, but you can take somebody's life. Really? Really? Okay. Right now, look it up for yourself. The minimum education, GED. No shade on GEDs, right? But it depends. Some people get a GED because they couldn't hack high school. They just failed out, cut class, didn't want to go. GED was plan B. Others, due to a variety of other circumstances, just had to go the GED route. Okay, I understand there's different reasons for this. Okay, some departments, that's all they require. Other departments require an associate's degree. Sorry about that. Other departments require an associate's degree or some college. Okay. All right. Next, and that's changing, by the way. Several departments are ramping up the education requirement. Entrance exam. So usually, usually there is an entrance exam that includes reasoning and problem-solving skills, an essay, and a sample report, like an incident report that they have to write out. So what they want to do is make sure that these officers can write well, communicate well, and take a look at the vocabulary. Because as you know, those police reports can be used in court as the basis of evidence or complement evidence. Now, fitness tests. Running, push-ups, sit-ups, lifting weights, sprints on an exercise bike. This is typically part of the academy portion. They have to go through some fitness tests, but even this is being reduced, where it's not as stringent as it used to be. And once you become a police officer, hey, fitness test, many of these departments, my understanding, don't test after you become an officer, okay? So now think back to some cases, Rashard, Brooks, and so forth, where if an officer fit, good shape, on in a gym running, feel confident, I could pretty much track somebody down, especially if they might have been drinking a little bit. Maybe a different outcome. Okay, we got to reserve judgment across different cases, but being physically fit can actually potentially decrease fatal use of force if officers feel they can literally run and catch somebody. Next, the academy training, it ranges significantly from 12 to 24 weeks. In some departments, LAPD and some others, you're on probation for up to a year, right? So what can happen is you go through your academy, you're on the street for a year on a probationary period. And you could be knocked back down to the academy if you do something wrong during that probationary period. Not all departments have that. For some, 12 weeks, gun in the badge, good to go. Others, not so much. Basic technology skills, knowing how to use a laptop and software. You get pulled over, they run checks. And so basically being able to use those programs, there needs to be some comfort with that. Principal conduct. This is interesting. This is, are you patient? Are you respectful? You have good judgment. You have mental strength. Think about it. You're a police officer. There's protests. Protesters are spitting at you, calling you names, talking about your family. You have to have a mental fortitude to remain calm. Okay. Integrity. How do you test for that when somebody's coming in, right? There's certain techniques that are used, but to some degree, people are really good actors. So you don't always know whether somebody has good judgment or not on the front end or integrity. Background check. So no felonies, that's pretty much universal. There's some marijuana exceptions in there in terms of the background check, but the background check is actually somewhat secretive. Many officers I talk to say they don't know the whole process of the background check because the department can hire a third party or the unit that does it within the department. They don't share what they're looking at, but they'll interview people's families, friends. They might go back to high school. So the background check can be pretty thorough depending on where you are. The time of the offense matters. Say you committed a misdemeanor when you were 15, something like that, and now you're 30, or even a felony, depending on where you are. The gap between the time of the offense can be taken into account. They look at your work history and your financial history. They often run credit checks. Because if you are financially compromised, you may be tempted on the job. Okay, so they don't want that. Medical, drug, and psychological tests. So yes, the psychological tests, I understand some people can quote unquote beat it, but it's still worth having. Okay, very little downside to that. And now most police departments, here's a key thing. Most police departments are understaffed. The vast majority of departments I've come across, understaffed. And so what can happen is if you're understaffed, for some departments, they may relax certain selection criteria. Oh, former gang member, or, a little felony back in the day. Don't worry about that. They need bodies. So it's very interesting, okay? And finally, the least experienced officers tend to be overrepresented in Black and brown and low income areas. What do I mean? Talk to a police officer about assignments, the shift they're assigned to, and the beat, the area, the physical location they're assigned to. What tends to happen in many police departments is seniority is key. So if I'm an experienced officer, I can request a certain shift in a certain area. Okay. Now, the experienced officers, they paid their dues, so to speak. They want to go home every night. So they may pick a morning shift in an affluent area, right? Pretty high probability to go home that night. But if the senior experienced officers disproportionately choose those shifts in those areas, who does that leave? They go into black and brown communities, low income communities, and so forth. And not to say there aren't black affluent areas, but lower income, working class, black and brown communities and so forth, the least experienced officers, disproportionately. That's why a lot of times with these excessive use of force incidences, it skews a bit younger, okay, in terms of the age of the officer. Now, what else? Now, this is key right here. We ask police officers in our trainings, why do you think people become police officers? Okay, we ask them that question. Right? Now, you see the options here, the benefits, the pay, the schedule, to help people, to catch bad guys, to shoot people. They like having authority, family tradition, meaning a lot of cops in their family, influence of law enforcement officer that was not a family member. It's fun or exciting or for other reasons. Okay, so we put this up as a multiple choice. They can select their top 2 choices. So I'm going to show you the results, actual results from a real training. And these results pretty much represent the vast majority of trainings we've done across the country, training over 30,000 police officers, touching over 2,000 police departments. Okay, so here we go. So 5% mentioned the benefits, 6% the pay. Nobody said the schedule. Interesting. 33% said to help people, 15% to catch bad guys. Nobody said to shoot people. This was in one particular department, 355 officers in this department. 3% said they like having authority. 5% said family tradition, a lot of cops in their family. 5% said not influence of a non-family police officer. 23% said it's fun or exciting. 4% said for other reasons. Now, this is pretty typical of what we see across the country. Key thing, number one, 33% to help people. That's usually number one across the country, right? And this is usually number 2. It's fun or exciting. What do I mean? So I do fly-alongs and ride-alongs all across the country, right? When I do these trainings. And so just to get a feel how policing works from insider's perspective, don't feel, some of y'all thinking, oh, he drank the Kool-Aid, he's brainwashed. Slow down, okay? I was born in the Bronx, raised in Queens, came of age in the late 80s, early 90s in New York City during the height of the crack epidemic. I've seen this policing thing from a variety of perspectives. So there's trust, but I'm a scientist. So I'm gathering data and information. So doing these ride-alongs, and I'm in, I won't say what city I was in, but I was doing a fly-along in a helicopter, and then we did a ride-along. So we're doing a fly-along, flying around the city, right? Looking around, and nothing much is happening. It's a Wednesday, maybe 8 to 9:30. And so we land, the officer apologizes. I'm sorry, not much action. We were like, all good. I was with one of the police commissioners while we were doing this. Then we go on a ride-along. So we're in the car, riding around different areas that are known to have crime around the city. And again, not much action. And so the officer driving us around says the same thing, apologetic. I'm sorry, not much action, and so forth. I said the same thing to both of them. I pretty much said, but if there's not much action, or much activity, isn't that a good thing? They said, what do you mean? I said, well, if there's no activity or no action, that means people aren't getting, harmed, shot, killed, raped, that sort of thing. Isn't that a good thing? And both of these officers pretty much said the same thing. This is in a large urban area. They both pretty much said the same thing. They're both like, not really. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we assume in our city, there's always crime going on. It's just our job to find it, okay? But here's the deal, officers, please hear me. If you go out and there's not much crime that day, not much action, just consider it a good day. Don't be disappointed that there was a crime that day, right? I mean, just accept it as a good day, okay? Now, here's the thing about it's fun or exciting, because this is in that vein. On the other side of the officer saying it's fun or exciting, right? That fun and excitement, pedal to the metal, lights and sirens, driving through the streets, doing those holds, all that stuff, fun and excitement. Please understand, officers and citizens, there is a natural tension between the fun and excitement of policing and the community's trauma. What do I mean? What I tell officers is on the other side of that fun or excitement is the worst day of somebody's life. If you're chasing down bad guys, that means a crime happened, somebody's been hurt, murdered, raped, something bad has happened to somebody else. So for you, it's another day at the office. For them, it's the worst day of their lives, okay? There's a natural tension there. You can't have a bunch of fun and excitement and the citizens aren't being hurt. It can't work both ways. Okay. Now, all stuff is property crime. Okay. So let's move. We asked them another question. What percentage of fatal police shootings of civilians in the U.S. do you believe are unjustified? That is, should have led to some level of criminal conviction. Now, this is very interesting. Now, some of you look at our response options: 0, less than 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over 5%. So these were the response options. They could only choose one. You can give some thought to what they might have said before I show you the results. Go ahead, a few seconds. Okay. Here's the deal. And this is pretty typical. Okay. So we have 2% saying 0. Pause. I point this out in the training. Say there's 200 people in the audience. I'll say, okay, 2%. So there's 4 people in here that literally believe there is no such thing as a bad shooting, that it should have led to some level of criminal conviction. It just doesn't happen. I did a training. I won't say what state I was in. It was for State Association's Chiefs of Police. So I'm doing the training and I asked them, is there such a thing as a bad shooting? And one of them says, well, I mean, the majority said, well, yeah, it is a bad, And then one chief says, well, no. I said, really? You don't think so? He's like, no, there's always a reason. I said, so if I'm standing here right now, giving this training like this, unarmed and speaking, and somebody stood up and shot me dead, would that be a bad shooting? He was like, well, you could have slept with his wife last week. And yes, he actually said that. True story. Okay. And the rest of the chiefs are looking at him like, what's up? So if he's the chief saying that, imagine what his department is like. Okay. Not all these cops think alike, but usually there's 1 to 3% that will say 0. Now, 59% usually between less than 1 and 1%. That's usually where the mean and the median end up being. Okay. Right there. But we still have variation. So these officers are not thinking alike. So 59% is saying less than 1. So 61% less than 1. Okay. But then you got 39% saying something else. Then usually there's 2 or 3% down here at the over 5% also. Okay. Now, let's get deeper. We asked them, of the 900,000 police officers across 18,000 police departments, 8 to 900,000. 900,000 includes auxiliary and everything else. So we can say 8 to 900,000 is in that range, depending on who you count. But anyway, I would vouch for the judgment, training, and character of what percentage of them. Okay. So response options were 100%. You see here, 95, 99, 90, 80. You see the response options here in terms of the judgment, training, and character. Why? The investigations pretty much revealed that excessive use of force, especially fatal excessive use of force that was unjustified, comes down to the officer's judgment, training, or character. Characters like racism and stuff like that. Okay? All right. So try to identify where you think the most popular answer is going to be with, of these listed. Okay? Here we go. 6% said 100%. Now, process this. So you have police officers who said they would vouch from a distance for 8 to 900,000 other people, most of whom they've never met, from a distance. The judgment, training, and character. Let's rewind. Remember, 18-year-olds are sworn in 4 states. Gun and a badge, underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, and impulse control issues because they're adolescents still, right? And some officers are vouching for them from a distance, right? So some of these officers take principal stands in these training. I'm just going to say that, okay? Right, but you see the variability. So pretty interesting. You have a distribution here, and the most popular answer, less than 70%. I've gone to lunch or talked to officers. They'll say, but vouch for 800,000 and 900,000 officers. I won't vouch for everybody in my department, let alone everybody in the country. So you see, and this tends to be the most popular answer. Usually it's at or above 50%. Okay, so it's an interesting nuance. On the one hand, you have them saying unjustified shootings are pretty minimal, right, in terms of criminal conviction. But on the other hand, they'll say, well, in terms of judgment, training, and character, okay. All right. So police in the public divided by race over whether attaining equality requires more changes. Percentage saying that this is a Pew Research study. So on this side, it says our country has made the changes needed to give blacks equal rights than whites. This is amongst police officers, right? Our country needs to continue to make changes to give blacks equal rights than whites. So amongst police officers, 92% of white officers says we're good. The country has done enough. 6% say we're not good. We need to do more. Now, this was done in 2016. Amongst the black officers, 29% said we need to do, we've done enough. 69% said we need to do more. So even black and white officers differ in their psychology. So when we say our police officers, do they think and are alike? This is what I mean. In certain ways, as a culture, they have a lot in common. But when you ask these sorts of questions, I'm showing you the variability, okay? Amongst the overall population, 57% of whites feel we've done enough. It's higher for cops. This is helping you right now. You see the gap amongst whites between police and the general population. For blacks, 12% of the population say, we've gone far enough. That's 29% for black cops. So you still see a difference there, all right? But the trend is in the same direction, okay? So all cops are not alike in terms of their selection criteria and their psychology within policedom, okay? That's a word I made up, policedom. Okay, so here's your bottom line. The selection criteria and best characteristics of police is not the same across the country, okay? Varies quite a bit. Public safety may get a bit worse before it gets better. What do I mean? Right now, Black Lives Matter, everything is going on. Police reform. I'm on the mayor's police reform task force for Atlanta. We're talking about best practices. We're talking about evidence and so forth. As a psychologist, here's my analysis. Morale is low. I talk to officers. Morale is low across the country in policing. Question, would you want to be a police officer right now? Would you encourage somebody to be a police officer right now? Right, okay, probably not. So the recruiting classes are probably going to decrease. Existing officers who don't like the pressure and whatever may just quit, putting more strain on the department. More of those officers working more shifts, more fatigue, more bad judgment, right? Also, these sort of black and brown folks and college educated folks who would like to go into policing because they have critical thinking skills and everything else. I'm at Morehouse College. I asked my students, do you all want to be police officers? Out of 25 students, maybe 3 will raise their hand and 2 of them want to be feds, FBI. The other one maybe want to be a street cop. But for the most part, not so much. And these are good dudes, young men who can really make a difference. But I've talked to police officers, black and brown, who will lose friends, whose family members cut them off because they became police. Again, I ask you, would you want to be an officer today? So if you wouldn't want to be an officer, and people who have the characteristics, college educated, critical thinking, that sort of thing, if they don't want to be police officers, who does that leave, right? So we're going to have a critical mass of the folks who this is their sort of plan B to be driving police. Now, as our policies change, and as reform changes, and as we have some structure, you can have an infusion of a lot of those critically thinking people to get into policing, but it's probably going to be a gap in between. So just be ready. That's just my read on the situation. Finally, the public and police officers understand that some people should not be police officers. I showed you that data, judgment, training, character. We understand that. If you ask an officer in his heart of hearts, you pull him aside and say, is everybody in your department a good cop? Would you vouch for? I mean, yeah, pull him aside or her aside. All right. But are departments selecting or making bad apple officers? Fundamental question. Is there an issue in our selection process where it's not weeding out the bad apples who are out there and the bad apples get into policing? Or is the culture of policing making a good apple and converts them into a bad one? I don't know. I don't know the data on that. But or is it a combination of the two? Okay. So we're going to leave it at that. Got another myth coming up. This is sort of a long one. Hopefully you went all the way through to the end. Please look out for the next videos, probably the next day or two. We'll put up some more. Everybody be safe out there. If you are protesting, please mask and social distancing. All right, until next time, folks. God bless.